All right, space fans. It looks like another patch has landed on our desk from somewhere deep in the Buchlydian Universe. Let's put on our archaeological hats and take a look. But first, we're in need of a serious attitude adjustment. Today's attitude adjustment is being brought to you by Global Dynamics United. They make a tilt plate that is perfect for adjusting your attitude. Check it out. There we go. Isn't that so much better? I think so. All right, so this is a really complicated patch, and so what we'll do is first we're going to simplify it down to the bare bones, talk a little bit about that, and then we'll build it back up and see how we got there. So first, I'm going to pull out my magic wand and I'm going to start turning things off. All right, so there we are down to just the alien heartbeat. But let me take a step back earlier than that and talk about our 266E, source of uncertainty. I remember seeing a video by Todd Barton recently where he commented, "You're only as expressive as your control voltages." The 266E is a great source of control voltages, a lot of expressive potential, and I played around with using the many different control voltages to control my 261E oscillators, playing with symmetry and timbre and higher order and so forth and so on. But what I kind of found was that just randomness alone doesn't give you something that really holds interest. There needs to be a little bit more structure. I think it might have been JS Bach who once said, if you take care of the order, the chaos will take care of itself. So we want to use those cool control voltages. We want to have some stuff which they express, but we need to do it with a little bit of order. So that first bit of order is therefore going to be our heartbeat. It's going to be the groove that drives all of this. And so I selected a 15 beat pattern. I love odd meters. And I used a 250E to give me that pattern. So we're going to wander on down there, take a look. Our inner ring are normally the time values, and we're using a pendulum ratchet to drive this arbitrary function generator, so we can use the time values for control voltages instead of for controlling time. So as you can see, the upper left-hand corner where our time value control voltage comes out, we've got a couple of banana cables plugged in. We've got a yellow one and an orange one. The orange one goes to a velocity parameter, and the yellow one goes to a pulse input of our 281 function generator. And that inner ring basically defines our kick drum velocity. So when the knob is cranked around all the way to the right, we get a full velocity kick drum. Not quite as far cranked around, we get a less intense kick drum, and that's what gives us a little bit of variation in that pattern. So the 281 is giving us the envelope. It's choosing our attack and decay parameters appropriate for a kick drum. The 292 quad dynamics manager, that's using a gate function to gate the kick drum. And the kick drum outputs are flowing into a filter unit that we can season to taste to make a kick drum sound. So we'll just follow those wires up really quick and then return to the next part of the patch. So the next part of the patch we're going to talk about is our hi-hat. And to generate the hi-hat, we're using pulse 2 of the outer ring of control voltages. Now, when you just look at that LED, it looks like it's mostly on and occasionally off, because every state, almost every state is firing it. We don't see it turn on and off, even though that's what the pulse is doing. We just see it as basically reading on. But these hi-hats are basically on every single state of the 15-beat pattern except for 2. Let's bring those in and hear what they sound like. All right, the hi-hats are now in the mix. So what's going on here is, in addition to the normal hi-hat function of just always hitting on every single beat, what I've got with our function generator on the left, the 281, we've got the top 2 modules in a quadrature mode, and we're using that quadrature mode to give us a couple of things. One is we've got this slow developing swell where it takes a second to ramp up, 3 seconds plus 3 seconds to stay high, and then another second to ramp down before we go to the next full second of ramp up. And what this means is that by putting this into the velocity parameter of our hi-hat, we can get that feature where the hi-hats are playing most of the time, but then they slowly disappear, and then they come back to add a little bit of surprise and interest before you really notice that they were gone. The kick is being driven by pink noise from the source of uncertainty. The hi-hat is being driven by blue noise. Now, I mentioned that our quadrature is also driving something in our source of uncertainty, and I want to point that out now. All right, that yellow wire is the number of states that our quantized random voltages will provide. If it's just down at 2 states, we get 0 and we get full voltage, and we basically get a binary up, down, or yes, no function. And binary functions can be cool. You can tap out just about anything in binary. But from a musical point of view, instead of interpreting bits, we want to have more expressive control voltages. So as we increase the number of states, we get more and more potential divisions of that 0 to full voltage scale, and those different divisions can then be read as note values between a minimum and a maximum note. Now, by default, the 0 and full voltage, those are the complete opposite ends of our tonal spectrum, and that may be too wide for a given voice. So what we're going to use is a 256 to compress the range of voltages that come out to be something that corresponds more meaningfully to a musical line. So the top unit, the top output voltage, and the top 256 unit, that's our baseline. And so what we've done is we've selected a lower range. As we can see, it's a very minimal value on the left-hand side. The breakpoint peaks a little bit in the middle, and then it goes down to a lower voltage on the right-hand side. The left and right-hand side really indicate the range, the basic range of our baseline, but that peak in the middle allows us to escape the range with an interesting middle voltage should we have a number of states that lands close to that middle. So that's the baseline. The lower source of uncertainty on the quantized random values, that goes to the second 256 unit, and that is for our melody line. Now again, we've got our 0 and our full voltage both down at the bottom. They're down at the bottom for a slightly different reason, but the most important feature is that we have this concept of returning to the tonic. And so if we know that we're going to hit the top and the bottom back and forth because of our quadrature function, we want it to be the case that they are going back and forth between notes that make sense one to another. And certainly if you imagine the tonic circle connecting back at the center, that makes sense. And then we have a breakpoint rising in the middle that truly gives us all of the room we have to ascend and all of the room we have to descend in our voltage range. So if we want to do runs of a pattern between 2 notes, if we hit that high breakpoint value, that tells us the full range of the run that we can go from low to high. So let's turn that on and let's listen to what that sounds like. Okay, we can hear two things going on here. We can hear a bass line and we can hear a melody line. And so that melody line is coming out of that second unit, the bass line is coming out of that first unit. And the source of uncertainty is giving us the initial random voltages that are translated into a musical range. And then from that musical range, we now need to turn that into actual notes. And to do that, we're going to use a voltage quantizer. So here you can see our Mark Verbos 263V voltage quantizer. The bass notes are coming in the left. They come in the input channel, they go out the output channel and onto some oscillators. The bass is very, very simple. A note comes in, we translate that into a bass note played by our 259E complex waveform generator. All right, what's happening on the right-hand side is a little bit complicated, so let me go through it. A control voltage comes into our first input. That first input is quantized, and then that quantized value goes into our shift register. The shift register is then pulsed by our talk pulse, which actually is the only thing that can play eighth notes in our sequence. And then that quantized value is then passed through a 256E. So let's go up and look at that. What's happening here is that the note we just played is A1, the input, and the note we are going to play is A2, the other input. And we're selecting between the two using, you guessed it, another source of uncertainty. Let's scan over there. There you have it. We've got another quantized random voltage, and here we've selected a number of states that works musically pretty well, so that when we're doing a run between two notes, we've got a number of states that we can choose to hit that run. And so if there's a big distance between the first note and the second note, our run is going to be, maybe as big as thirds or fifths. But if it's a small run, it's gonna go by smaller increments. We come back to the 256E, and it then selects this voltage between A1 and A2. And then that comes down to the shift register, which then plays that out through another quantization to our melody line. So, as you've seen, we've got this concept of the note we have just played and the note that we're going to play, and this sets us up for something really cool, which is the ability to play runs between the two notes that gives us a kind of voice leading, even though we're using randomization to get from point A to point B. Let's check that out. All right, and now we can sort of hear how our little fills fill in between those two notes, and they hit their targets instead of just being random. And it takes two elements of randomness and brings them together in a way that makes them sound a lot less random. Now let's go look at how we piece all this together. I would certainly be remiss if I didn't show our oscillators. So we got the 259 on the left and the 261 on the right. 259 is giving us our bass notes. The principal oscillator is actually mostly acting just as the sync signal for the modulation oscillator on the left. So we take our sawtooth wave and then we sync it with a hard sync, and that gives us that edginess. On the 261, we've got a basic synth sound, and we've decided to just hold fast our timbre, symmetry, and higher order and pass those notes up for interpretation. We've got the principal oscillator playing the simple notes, and we've got the modulation oscillator playing the fills. All right, so now we can see we've got all these audio signals that came up from the oscillators. They go into our Quad Dynamics Manager. The 281 on that left-hand side is giving us our envelopes, and all of the pulses are coming from our pendulum ratchet. Now, some of those pulses are then further shared with the source of uncertainty so that the random changes happen in time with our music, but they're basically linking signals in that way. We've got a couple of yellow cables coming in to give us randomness on the decay function. That extra stretch of the decay is what gives us sometimes long bass notes or sometimes short bass notes. The bass is going through our combo gate, and our synth sounds are going through just a low pass, variable low pass gate. That's what gives us that sort of classic synth wop 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 sound. You can see that the audio signals coming out of the Dynamics Manager are diverging. Half of them are going up to a 291 and the other half are going off to the right. Let's take a look at that. The signals that are going into the 291 are getting collected, and we've got a running pattern that's actually a Hamming function. What we do there is we have the ability to choose all or none or any combination of the A, B, and C inputs to combine together. And the Hamming encoding allows us to add or drop one voice at a time so that we're never changing more than one voice at a time, and we can still get every combination of the voices. So we're changing one at a time, and we're selecting between an alternate bass and the two different melody lines. We blend those together, and that creates a signal which we can then ultimately modulate. Now here you can see our little digital patch bay. So we're just relaying the 291 signal off to the right-hand boat. But what we can also do is collect all of the A, B, C, and D, and that gives us a sort of a principal signal. And right now we're collecting the bass, and we're collecting the two melody voices, and we're sending that over to the filter on the right-hand side. And so what we're listening to in terms of bass and melody is just by itself those things. So now let's go a little bit crazy because we can. We've got that 285E frequency shifter. And what the frequency shifter can do is something really cool. It can take a simple, well-behaved audio signal, and it can split it and shift it in two different directions. So if you ask for a 100 hertz frequency shift, it'll take one half and send it up 100 hertz, the other half send it down 100 hertz. And if you understand how frequencies work, you know that this creates a very interesting harmonic relationship between those two split halves. Some would call it an inharmonic thing, but this is what takes us from a very conventional scale and puts us sort of in the outer universe, or maybe the Buchlydian universe. Let's listen to that. So now we're listening to just the split note portions. And you'll notice that some of the notes are not split, and some of them are split so much that it sounds like we're tapping on a percussion kit. How's that happen? Well, that takes us back to our 250E, the outer ring of control voltages. So the outer ring dictates how much splitting should be done for each phase of our 15-beat pattern. So as we can see at the beginning, we start with no splitting, we let the notes play. But then as we come around, surprise, we hit it really hard, and then we sort of gradually decay the split, and then we give it a couple other cracks on the way back to the top of the pattern. So that's what kind of adds some interesting randomness. And the note I'll make is that although the amount of splitting that we do is the same every time we go around the circle, every time they see a different pattern of notes, we get a different pattern of these in harmonicities. So this is kind of cool because it means that it feels like we're playing around with different elements of our percussion kit every time we go around the circle. So that's a great example of you take care of the order and the chaos will take care of itself. But now I can use my magic wand and we can combine the split side and the regular side to get our full pattern. The 260E pitch class generator generates 2 different notes with all of the octave harmonics. So it sounds a little bit like an organ, and we're going to throw in some organ stabs now. And we can sort of notice how our pendulum ratchet is giving us that talk parameter as well as the ticks and all the different divisions. We've got one note which is going on the ticks. We've got another note which is going on some division of the talks. And we've got one last little trick up our sleeve. We're using a piccolope to listen for the pulses of that of one of those 2 organ notes. And when it hears a short pulse, it adds to its little pulse balloon, and that gives it enough juice to make the second hit a little bit longer. So that gives us the da-da, da-da. So we can hear that, and just because we've been listening to this for a while, I'm going to change the pattern. Some different scale patterns, different feels that we can give to the groove. So there you have it. I'm really interested in knowing what you think about this video. If you like the color and the lighting, or you didn't like it, if you liked the explanation, or there was stuff I could have explained more or less, write your feedback in the comments. Let me know. I'm always trying to make my videos better. But here's hoping you at least like this one, and that it gives you some new ideas to go do new things as you make those journeys back and forth to the Buchlydian Universe. Until we meet again in cyberspace, this is Michael Tiemann. Thanks for watching.